This is Magic and Metal, an urban fantasy serial by Rebecca Riles, read for you by text-to-speech technology. In this monthly serial audiobook podcast, I'll read a beta version of each chapter for you. If you love urban fantasy detective stories, then Magic and Metal is the podcast for you. Chapter 3. I slogged through the wreckage, my boots squelching in puddles of rainwater and a cocktail I'd rather not identify. The night market lay in ruins, its vibrant pulse silenced. Charred beams and twisted metal formed a macabre skeleton where freaks and thrill-seekers once danced. The persistent drumming of rain on what was left of the awnings provided a fitting dirge. Zarna's Antiquities and Rugs, now a graveyard of shattered dreams and priceless junk. The sign hung crooked, a final insult to her legacy. Those trigger-happy bounty hunters, chasing their smoke and mirrors phantom, had turned her life's work into kindling. Poor Zarna never saw it coming. Mara was the phantom. That revelation crashed over my defenses and tried to drag me under, but I couldn't get lost in the chaos of the night. I shook it off, tried to focus on the ruined businesses and the lives left in tatters around me. Yet, the thought of Mara, my Mara, tangled up in this mess, clawed at me. Pain lanced through my temples, a jackhammer pounding away at my skull. I squeezed my eyes shut, pinching the bridge of my nose. Breathe in, breathe out. Iris's voice crackled through my ear cuff, dripping with synthetic sympathy. Brain on the fritz again? Want an analgesic, or are you doing the strong and silent routine? I'm fine, I snapped, swiping at the air to bat away her digital concern. Iris, search for any video feeds that may show the Phantom or myself in pursuit. Make sure nothing shows me letting her escape. There are no available camera feeds at the moment. We will have to wait until eyeworm recordings are synced to the Field of Souls to corrupt those, she said. Also, check on any pickups from church ops. Getting between the church and what they wanted was never good, but at least my dues were paid. Lightning split the sky as Senior Detective Simone Driscoll strutted towards me, her golden bob flashing like a warning beacon. She was perched under her mobile throne, an umbrella held by Davies, my ex-protege turned glorified parasol bearer. This was her promotion? I plastered on my best nothing to see here face and braced for impact. Time to dance with the devil in designer heels. Inside, my guts churned like a storm-tossed sea. I tipped 2 fingers to my forehead as I stopped in front of her, a half-assed salute for the occasion. Detective Driscoll, Davies, what a night for a pipe to burst. The words tumbled out before I could rein them in. Real smooth, Spencer, cracking jokes at a crime scene. That'll win her over. Detective Frostbite didn't twitch. Her eyes raked over me, slow and deliberate, like a wolf sizing up its next meal. Spencer, was that supposed to be humor? Simone's voice sliced through the tension, cool and razor-sharp. Because I failed to see how anything about tonight warrants even the faintest hint of amusement. Her eyes narrowed as she surveyed the aftermath, her lip curling in a way that made my stomach churn. Eyes like a predator's, sizing up wounded prey. Decades of hard work, entire livelihoods, she gestured to remains of a noodle shop. Shattered, all because some bounty hunters wanted to play hero. And where were the runners? Sitting on their hands while everything went to hell. Driscoll started closing the gap, each step measured and deliberate, like a stalking predator. I understand you were the first on the scene for this so-called phantom apprehension. Simone's voice was smooth, but her eyes narrowed, sharp as a blade. She let the word phantom hang in the air, dripping with disdain. Yet, from where I stand, it looks like you barely lifted a finger once the bounty hunters went off script. She got close enough for me to count the pores on her dark skin, but all I wanted was a mountain between us. My inner dragon snarled, begging for release, but I shoved it down. So, enlighten me. Driscoll's eyes bored into mine, sharp as a scalpel. What exactly am I supposed to tell the director when he asked why his point agent turned tonight into a circus? Should I blame faulty equipment? Maybe some freak environmental mishap? Or should I just admit it was sheer incompetence and call it a day? The intensity of her gaze was too much, so I let my eyes fall away. It wasn't fear, it was survival. The rain pelted my face, each icy droplet a reminder of the storm brewing inside me. "Okay, detective," I said. "You've got a point. I didn't exactly cover myself in glory tonight. Usually we'd send up the sky eyes to collect evidence." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "But sometimes you get a perfect storm of crap. Like a zone chock full of electronic interference, heavy rain, swarms of aggressive flyers, or a market turning into a war zone the second bounty hunters decide to go wild. Times like those, the rulebook goes out the window." I paused, sliding my gaze past the severe woman to Davies holding her umbrella. She looked across the still smoldering rugs. Anywhere but at me. Driscoll arched one perfect eyebrow. Plasma bolts ripping through vendor stalls, shredding displays, and igniting fires everywhere you looked. Civilian bystanders screaming, fleeing in blind panic in every direction as the heavy mods joined in. My voice had taken on a gritty rasp. Before I could engage pursuit protocols, the entire market had devolved into a smoke-choked, demilitarized zone. I jabbed a finger toward the shattered husk of what had once been a noodle vendor's stall, now an unrecognizable ruin. That's where Drone 1 went down, lost in the chaos, rain, and crossfire before I could get optics on the Phantom. By the time the smoke started to clear enough for visual confirmation, he was already a whisper on the wind. I shrugged, allowing a hollow approximation of self-recrimination to crease my features. "You're right, detective. I'll be the first to admit I made a piss-poor accounting of myself out there, but I swear to you, it wasn't due to lack of effort or commitment to the objective on my part." The rain's persistent patter surrounded us, each drop a ticking clock in this endless moment. Driscoll's face might as well have been carved from stone. Simone's eyes bored into me, searching for weakness. I met her gaze, unflinching, a cobra facing off against a mongoose. "Your explanation is acknowledged," she said, her gold-tipped fingernail tapping against her chin in a steady rhythm, each click a countdown until I was fired. "But it does little to inspire confidence. I find it difficult to believe that so many failures could occur at once, given the circumstances you've described. However, I'll grant that the situation was uniquely unstable." A glimmer of hope sparked in my chest, quickly snuffed out by her next words. "That said," Driscoll's voice sliced through the tension like a blade, "it doesn't excuse your failure to lock down any real evidence on our primary target. The Phantom slipped away again, right under your nose. Now, thanks to that, this case is circling the drain, and we're left with nothing. No leads, no direction, just your mistakes." Driscoll's words perched on my shoulders, talons sinking deep. Her eyes glinted, promising to tear what was left of my career to shreds. "One has to question the logic behind keeping a pursuit agent with such obvious deficiencies," Driscoll said, her tone smooth as silk but sharp enough to cut, especially considering the rumors circulating about your less-than-stellar performance reviews as of late. Her words slammed into me. My skull became a pressure cooker ready to blow. Performance reviews? Circulating where exactly? The casual way she dropped that bomb spoke volumes. Driscoll was testing the waters, probing for weakness. My recent missions hadn't been highlight reel material, but I hadn't realized the higher-ups suspected anything. She tried to corner me, dangling bait and hoping I'd bite. It was tempting to lash back, but I knew better. I could lie and risk getting caught, or reveal just enough truth to keep her at bay. Lying could buy me time, but if she saw through it, I'd be finished. Her lips barely moved, a sliver of a smile that held no warmth. "Let me be perfectly clear. Anything short of your best isn't just a disappointment. It's a liability. And liabilities don't last long around here. Am I clear?" Driscoll's words hung in the air like a toxic fog, seeping into every corner of the ruined night market. My skull throbbed, each pulse of the tech-induced migraine, and the beast clawing just beneath my skin. She was onto something, circling closer to my carefully guarded secret. I squared my shoulders, meeting her gaze with a mask of casual indifference. "Crystal." Inside, my mind raced. No way in hell was I letting her uncover what I really was. Her only response was a nod so sharp it could cut glass, and then she was gone, swallowed up by the gloom. I just dodged a bullet. Maybe. She hadn't bought my story, not completely, but she hadn't called me out on it either. Driscoll's silhouette faded into the murk, my muscles unwinding as she vanished. Only when she disappeared did I let out a ragged breath, sagging against the pockmarked wall behind me. Soaked hair plastered to my forehead as I leaned back, my stomach doing somersaults. Close one, too damn close. Despite the pain and pressure, I managed to keep my cover intact. Somehow, I deflected the bulk of Driscoll's suspicions, even if the unrelenting woman clearly remained poised to pounce on the slightest misstep going forward. A new pain punched its way into my skull, a heavyweight champ going a few rounds with my brain. I curled into myself without a second thought. An old mantra from my childhood played in my head, as clear as the rainwater dripping off my roof. Breathe in, hold, breathe out, hold. It was a slow rhythm, a lifeline. I couldn't stay like this in the middle of a crime scene. I had to get moving. Each step heavier than the last, my thoughts pressed down like a leaden cloak. I turned back toward the wreckage of my drone, half buried beneath a tangle of debris. I needed to salvage whatever I could. Lark's voice echoed in my mind, taunting me with the urgency of his demand. Take care of the Phantom. The words had been a simple directive, but now they twisted like a knife in my gut. Did he know? Did he know that the Phantom was his wife, Mara? The thought sent a shiver of dread racing down my spine. Lark had always played the long game, and his penchant for manipulation was as sharp as a dragon's fang. I reached the drone. It was a mess, circuits fried and body dented, but I could possibly repair it. But the deeper question loomed larger. Was Lark setting me up? Was this all part of some twisted game to rid himself of his wife? Or worse, to use me as the instrument of her demise? He'd inherit the estate and play victim. I shook my head, trying to clear the fog of uncertainty that clouded my thoughts. I couldn't let paranoia take root, but the gnawing suspicion was hard to ignore. Lark had always been ambitious, a schemer with a penchant for getting what he wanted at any cost. And if Mara was tangled up in whatever web Lark was weaving, then I needed to steer clear. I knelt beside the wreckage, fingers deftly working to pry open the drone's casing. The rain continued to pour, a relentless torrent that blurred the edges of my vision. I imagined Lark's laughter, the way he'd revel in my failure, in the chaos he'd orchestrated. You were supposed to be the hero, Jax, he'd say, his voice dripping with mockery. But look where you are now. As I turned to leave, the rain began to lighten, but the tension in the air thickened. The thought of confronting Lark gnawed at me. If he had orchestrated this entire mess, if he knew Mara was the Phantom, then what was his endgame? Was he planning to eliminate her, or was he using me as a pawn in his twisted game? She was family, complicated, messy family, but family nonetheless. I couldn't shake the image of her face, the way her eyes had looked when she revealed herself. There was pain in her eyes, a depth of sorrow that mirrored my own. Another grunt tried to claw its way out of my throat, but I forced it back down, straightening my back and putting on my game face. I navigated my way through the shadowed remains, moving towards the distant wail of sirens. This was just another test of endurance, another chance to prove to myself that I could turn this agony into fuel for whatever lie I needed to spin next. Subscribe at RebeccaRiles.com/join. I hope to see you in the community soon to read the story as I write it. Thank you for listening.